My story started nearly 21 years ago when I found out that I was going to have another daughter. We lost our first child 22 years ago. I went for an early ultrasound as my family doctor wanted to give me some confidence that I wouldn't lose this child and that everything was going to be different this time after a long hospital stay with the first child. So after the early ultrasound at 6 weeks, he decided to give me a call one evening and insisted on coming over for coffee in the evening. And I did not want him to because I thought something would be wrong, and this way nothing was wrong. But he informed us that they did see a massive birth defect, an extreme birth defect on the ultrasound, and that birth defect was called a grossum falloceal. That grossum falloceal is an abdominal wall defect that we're all start out with. After the heart starts to create at 5 weeks and starts to beat, the abdominal wall is actually open, and that the digestive tract, it's all a timing measure, turns. When that digestive tract turns, the abdominal wall for all of us closes up. Her digestive tract did not turn, therefore her abdominal wall didn't close up, and we found out that Emily was going to be born with 5 organs outside of her body. I was floored by this and horrified because I don't eat nitrates. I never drank coffee during the pregnancies. I did all the things that were correct in order to better the chances of my child. So after the initial shock, we did go to BC Women's Hospital, this is in British Columbia, and to get it seconded because I was hoping that maybe that there was a mistake on the reading of the radiologist of the birth defect. So there, my life went into turmoil immediately because they were not as positive as I had hoped. They were very aloof and very disappointed and very dismissive in the fact that we would even try to save this child. The birth defect is extreme. It's not just a matter of closing up a child. It's a matter of several, over 5,000 other birth defects are associated with this one. So I did not give up. I decided to reach out and do the exact opposite of what I did for my first child. First child, I tried to handle everything on my own. I didn't give it to God. This time I gave it to God, reached out for a gentleman named John, and reached out to a good friend that was a priest that would understand and help me find my bearings quickly, and to validate what I was trying to do so that I didn't feel like I was crazy and that this life does have value, very much value. They believed in me completely, and what they did is they guided me and began to teach me how to speak and talk to BC Women's for this unrelenting, called the sickest a child could ever be situation, because you have to defend your child from conception to what was going to be her natural end. And without being belittled, without being berated, demeaning behaviors, calling me at home, saying that I had a bad day, that I'm not seeing things clearly unless I do abort. They told me to relate it to a chalkboard, to erase it, and to start over. If I loved this child at all, that I would see her to be, or him to be mercied and to die at that moment, rather than, if I consider myself to be a good mother, to not inflict pain on her once being born. They did dismiss me. They rolled their eyes at me. Some of the ultrasound techs would even take my phone number, which is against then any kind of Privacy Act, call me at home and say, "Do you actually not realize what you are doing? We have seen this before. You need to abort this child. There is no chance for this child. Look at what happened the first time. And the child had no birth defects. Do you really think that something's going to happen and that something will happen and that this child will survive? Do you not realize the pain that you're going to be inflicting with the surgeries if this child does make it to birth?" For a medical community that you go to for them for advice, and they give what I consider very biased advice, very biased, it's hard to rationalize that human beings that we're supposed to share this planet with would actually do that to somebody and belittle them. So we did find out the sex of the baby through the ultrasound and prayed and named her immediately to add more warmth to this child, to give even more of a name. So when I addressed her in the hospital, we used her name every single time, so that then they began to document her name as Emily, not baby X, baby whatever, and disremoving. Having fired several perineonatalists in Vancouver, we found one that believed in us. He put us in touch with a pediatric general surgeon that does have a passion for these children. All these children are either aborted or die. They don't have a very good likelihood of survival. He said that's all you can do at this moment is just pray for a strong will for that child. And he goes, your will, your determination, and your faith will come through in this child. So every day I would have a bath, bring myself down in the world, and then just pray that and cry that I was enough of a mother to make sure that I gave my child the amount of strength and the will, because I can't do it for her in these surgeries, that she had enough to live for and to pull herself through this. Emily was going to be born in November of 1998, but she had to come early because the amniotic fluid all leaked out, and a baby's in distress at that time. But because of all the situation around Emily, she needed 3 teams of surgeons in order to assess her immediately after birth. One was my assessment team, one was her assessment team, and one was just the initial breathing team. There was 5 doctors just for that. There was a total of, I think, 21 doctors in the delivery room for Emily. We had quickly found out with the organs outside the body. They were covered by a sac, that Emily now had 7 organs outside the body. My doctor looked at me and he had tears in his eyes, but a smile. And I looked at him and I started crying. We baptized her immediately. He allowed me to have a priest in the delivery room because I had to live a lifetime in that 30 seconds. I never got to hold her. I never got to see her. Because of her abdominal wall being open, shock is a very high risk factor, so they wrapped Emily up, not in a blanket, but saran wrap, with her whole torso covered in this saran wrap, and then a blanket, trying to minimize loss of heat. And Emily was off. I got a photo to give me confidence and hope. She was, I think, about 4.5 hours old, and we got to spend less than 10 minutes with her before she faced her first major surgery. Her first major surgery was 8.5 hours. I think it was about 3 o'clock in the morning. We went to go see her for the first time, and they only got 1 organ back into the body out of all 7. Because the abdominal wall never grew, because the organs were outside, it never stretched, so her cavity was smaller than a regular gestational 8-month-old baby would be. So it's not that easy just to fit these organs back into the body. So over time, what we had to do is we suspended them with overheated lamps over her body, and we lowered them back into her body cavity, which stretched out the body cavity in order to hopefully contain these organs. And we're on a time schedule as well. Then, it may have changed now, but then we had a total of 7 days because the risk of infection is massive to have the body cavity open for so long. Emily had many drugs administered to her. Most times she had 25 hookups to her. And these are blood transfusions, medications to keep her in a state of coma. They did not want her hungry. They did not want her awake. It was just a state to just be, to buy time to place these organs back into her body. They did not want her digestive system working. They wanted the minimal life in order to get these organs back into the body. To see your child that ill and to have her organs wrapped in what they would call a silo suspended above her body, and knowing that I can't do a thing for her, was so frustrating. So we had 3 choices to close her up. She had made it to day 7, and I was more than elated. But Emily had 3 choices. Her choices were man-made material. So you usually put a man-made plastic material only to say goodbye to the parents because the body rejects it and passes. Second was to use placental tissue from another woman that had given birth that day. It's the most non-rejectable material in the human body. That was not an option for us because there was only women in the hospital at that exact moment from the prisons that were coming off heroin onto methadone. So our third course of action was the only one that we could take, and that one was for, unfortunately, for Emily to have to do it on her own, and that's why I said I wish that I could have done it for her. She went into surgery every day trying to lower these organs back into her body cavity. Once they actually did that, they actually had to contain them, and then they had to pull all of her abdominal wall from her back to her front. And that's not meant to have done to the human body, because it was a third of her body that they had to make up the skin for, and then all the skin as well. And Emily survived that. When she came out of surgery, I didn't get to see her right away, but when the surgeon came out to tell me that he thought that she was gonna live, I held my breath for that first week. I never asked anything. I just hoped and prayed. When he told me that he most likely that she was gonna live, I fell down to my knees. And I just kept thanking the surgeon for having a faith, believing in what I was trying to believe in. We tell this story because we were given less than no chance of survival, especially with my history of losing my first child to a spontaneous blood clot. Because with this is the sickest a child could ever be born. It's not a quick birth defect that you can fix or learn to adapt. It's immediate life. And I've always had a strong conviction against abortion, just because that's who I am. That's the way I was raised, and I always will be. It's not because this circumstance happened to us. But if I didn't have that strong conviction, if I didn't have the family that I did and the friends that reached out, and especially the people that prayed all over the world for this child, it would have turned out so sad, because a lot of people actually see that there is no reason for these children to even be given a chance. You have a child out of love in any circumstance.
Hi, my name is Emily, and I am 20 years old. And 20 years ago, I was born with a Grossenfeld-Thiel. So I was born with no skin on my abdomen, and I was born with 7 internal organs outside of my body. Both my mom and my dad suffer a lot of mixed messages and stuff from different doctors because they felt a lot of pressures and a lot of negativity towards them, because when she would go for different ultrasounds, different appointments, they would say just to abort the baby, or they wouldn't even want to call me by my name. They would just say it. They didn't show the compassion, didn't show at all no compassion and empathy. It's really difficult and challenging because obviously as people, we look up to people who are higher authority of us, so like a principal or a teacher or a boss, but especially medical professionals, we look to them for guidance and support, but they did the complete opposite, a lot of them. Any human life, doesn't matter age, race, gender, sexuality, every person has value in this world. Doesn't matter if they're 2 weeks old, doesn't matter if they're 18 weeks gestation or they're 82. We're all teachers and learners, and we can all learn from each other, and that we give everyone a chance. I want to devote my life back to specifically children and youth, but also more so likely at Beach Children's Hospital. I'm so grateful for all the love and the care that they showed me, not just throughout my mom's pregnancy, but also still now. Like, I'm past the age to go there, and I'm still in contact with my surgeon there and a lot of the people who I fundraise with. I believe that we all belong in this world. It doesn't matter if we have a challenge or a disability or something, or hurdle that we're struggling with.